Hi, welcome to Small Business Development Center at Daytona State College. The Small Business Development Center has been in Florida since 1976. We are a network of consultants who provide consulting services to small businesses to help them grow and succeed. We not only provide consulting services in the areas of business plan, marketing, social media, cybersecurity, a business model canvas, or key performance indicators, all the tools which will help you grow and succeed, but also we provide training. And these trainings are based on the latest insights and the research that we get, which is needed for the businesses to grow and succeed. In the end, I would like to say, enjoy this version of our training program. Let us know if there are some improvement areas that we need to do it. I hope that if you need further assistance and help, please come to Small Business Development Center here at the Daytona State College, or you can go to www.sbdcdaytona.com. Thank you.
Started, and I'm flying a little bit blind as to whether or not you can hear me or see everything, so please bear with me. Today's webinar is on project management, a framework for success. Simply put, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet or exceed stakeholder needs and expectations from a project. With us today from the Florida Small Business Development Center at Daytona State College, your presenter is Kevin Tilley, a consultant. Also here today is Mitch Bryant, my fellow consultant, Tracy Martin, our senior staff assistant, and George Tewari, the director at the Daytona State College office. And now, for those that are physically here, who I already know, I was going to ask them for their name and their business and what appealed to you to attend today's workshop. I think I will ask that. What appealed to you guys to show up today or to come to this today, besides the no cost?
No, we get more tools for our managing our business. That's the basic idea.
Silas is a very good client of ours, about to switch over to me, I think. And as he said, it's another tool that we offer to help him manage his business. And with you is
Santos?
Santos?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking for more just about for the more information
knowledge
about the business.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. The agenda, and again, as I said, this is my first webinar, so I may move through this faster than the 2 hours. I may move through it slower. We don't know yet. First, we want to learn to develop a project plan and the criticality behind starting it timely. Second, we want to understand how we set realistic project timelines and goals. Third, we want to learn to set the checkpoints to gauge a project's progress. How do we monitor and control the project? And finally, what I want to attempt to do is a live demo of two software programs that I have used frequently in the past, MS Project and all its variations, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, and a freeware, ProjectLibre, which I've actually found very easy to use and personally my favorite right now. As we move through today's presentation, these are terms that you're going to hear, and they also happen to be top 10 terms used by project managers. WBS, work breakdown structure. that's simply what it is that needs to be done and how it is to be done. It would include things like a bill of materials. It may include specific names and resources because of the speciality of the work. Milestones, significant point or event. Every project is going to have milestones. And I always found it very invigorating to the team to celebrate every milestone when you hit it. Baseline refers to the initial approved plan for the project. Triple constraint. Time, cost, and scope are three critical components of any project. Anytime one or more of those, is impacted, negatively or positively, the others are going to be also. What you need to be aware of and watch out for is if they are impacted negatively, there's a fourth item that creeps in, and that's quality. If a step in your project increases in time, cost, or suddenly goes from 1 inspection to 3, you've got to immediately ask, what's going on? Is there a quality issue with that product that we need to address? Project life cycle. Initiate the project, plan it, execute it, monitor it, close it. Gantt chart. I'm sure many of us are familiar with those. Simple graphical display of schedule information. CCB, Change Control Board. Change Control Board is a critical group to stay in touch with throughout the life of a project. Change Control Board should be made up of a group of the stakeholders, and these stakeholders are authorized to make critical to plan decisions, whatever they may be. If there's a design change, if there's a cost increase, scope creep. Stakeholders, that group of individuals that have a vested interest in the project. Very often they are the ones who came forward with the idea that they want to make a new product, build a building, design a software package, anything. But the stakeholder is the one who wants to see that project completed on time and under cost, and probably better than originally intended. Change management refers to what happens to the project management plan. The project management plan is the who, what, why, where, when of a project. And if there's any scope impact, the change management group, which is usually made up of stakeholders, needs to be aware and will almost always be asking, what's the impact on the scope of the project? And finally, projects should not go forward without some assessment of the risk, whether it's positive risk, most often it's negative risk. What is going to happen if a piece doesn't arrive on time? What's going to happen if a specific resource individual gets sick and leaves the project? Who's going to fill in for them? Risk mitigation is critical to every project. Okay, just for quick clarification, because this, in my early years as a program manager, this was always difficult for me. A project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end. Projects typically come with cost, date, and resource constraints. A program is a large project, typically made up of several smaller projects that are dependent on each other. Programs can often become overwhelming and stressful for one person to manage, so delegating individual projects is often the course taken. A term that's gained popularity the last couple of years is now we have portfolio managers. And I'm not talking about investment portfolios. A portfolio manager in the program project management world is one who has a bunch of programs that they're responsible for managing and monitoring. Any questions yet, Tracy? Are you going yet? Okay. I've been a program manager for about 14 years. This is two of the projects that I managed when I was with a company here in Volusia County, Teledyne Oil and Gas. The first was for an oil field off the coast of Nigeria. It was developed by Chevron. That was their name at the time. To be honest with you, I don't know what their name is now. FMC out of Houston was the main subcontractor for the project, and FMC was a customer of ours at Teledyne Oil and Gas. As you look at this, it's a display of an underwater oil field. All the little yellow square, I'm not quite sure how it's coming through on your screens, but here, all the little yellow squares, those could each be considered a project. Those are stations that either are powering up the next station down the line, or they're pumping oil through the hoses that you see, the red and black and blue hoses. Those are actually electrical power connectors that Teledyne manufactures. As simply put, we call them underwater extension cords. And all that leads up to the tanker, which once it's filled with the oil that's extracted, it goes into shore and dumps it, and eventually it makes its way to America, and elsewhere in the world is gasoline. That was one project. At the time, that was the largest project that Teledyne Oil and Gas took on. It was the $13 million project. It extended for, I believe, 18 months at the time, and we delivered our parts to FMC at a 92% on-time clip and had no quality defects and no delivery defects. And we actually worked, that's the first big project I worked with Microsoft Project on, and I simply fed my data to the program manager at FMC, and he uploaded it into their in-house program management software. They weren't using ProjectLibre, they weren't using Project, they were using their own special program. This next slide is another project that I worked on, and again, anything that you see a hose connected to is an individual science project, and everything you're looking at there is a program that was called the Monterey Accelerated Research System. Each of these stations are monitoring something different off the coast of California. Mostly, they're monitoring for earthquake activity and fish that go by, so that they can see, if they can discover all of a sudden a rare fish that hasn't been seen for a number of years, or what have you. The interesting part to this project for us was it was the first use of, and granted this is 2004, first use of Ethernet communications underwater. The yellow cables there are all Ethernet connections, which was the big thing at the time. We went through about 5 months of communications testing with these Ethernet cables to make sure that they worked. The single orange hose going out the back end of that square platform in the middle of the picture, it's actually a high power electrical connection. Instead of having 5 or 6 power cords running, we increased the voltage, ran it through one cord, and that's powering that whole setup there. That's a bit of the fun that I've had with projects. To develop your project plan and start it timely. This project plan is the who, what, why, where, when, and how the project is going to get done. It needs to be clearly understood who is in charge, what is to be delivered, why it's to be delivered, where, when, and how. This should create a clear roadmap for smart and swift decision making that may be required due to some changes that may come along. The plan is to the project as a foundation is to the house. The plan supports the project. You should never deviate from the plan. Any deviation in the project should always go back to the plan and say, is that in the plan that we can do that? If it's not, then you stop, unfortunately. The plan should include elements of risk management. It should break the project down into manageable chunks. I always like to use a pretty simple explanation. Assuming you're moving into a new house and you're going to paint all the rooms. Each room in and of itself is a project. And being that I come from a family of 8, we each got our own room to paint and had to be done in a timely fashion so that the scheduled project deliverables were everybody gets done with their room by noon on Sunday. So the house is ready and we can bring the furniture in Monday. It's important in the plan to identify your resources and or your requirements, if there's anything special needed, and what are the communication channels going to be? You can think of the communication channels as being an organization chart, if you'd like, but if there is an issue, who needs to talk to who and who can make the decision? That should all be set up and laid out, again, depending on how critical the project is in your company or how large it may be. It could be simply on a document that has who answers who. I'm communicating right now with one of the on-site participants. So excuse me for the brief interruption. Classic mistakes leading to project failure. And you can look at this list, and number 3 says lack of communications. But communications is typically the number one thing that will cause a project to fail or cause a project to hiccup, which could lead to failure. You've got to communicate up and down, left and right, what's going on with your project. And that's what the project plan is for. The first one there, underestimation of complexity, cost, and or schedule. Yeah, that's easy to understand. Failure to establish appropriate control over requirements and or scope. The companies that I worked in were manufacturing companies, and I apologize to any salespeople that may be in the audience, but it was not too infrequent we'd be halfway through making a product and the salesman would come out on the floor and say, they'd really like to have it in this material. Can we stop and, change from stainless steel to, say, Monel or something. And we'd say, yeah, we can stop. Are you going to charge them more? Well, no, we're not going to charge them more because they're a good customer, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got to have control over things like that. That can't happen, or else pretty soon you're going to find yourself losing money, maybe shuttering your doors. Failure to engage stakeholders. If an issue arises that could significantly impact the project, you need to go back to the person who originated the project and say, you know, Mr. President, this is what's happening. It can't continue unless you say it's okay to. Got to keep the stakeholders involved. Again, another communication channel that has to stay in place. Lack of oversight, poor project management, poor quality workmanship. If you don't have established in the work breakdown structure what the product is supposed to look like, how many grooves it's supposed to have in it, how many screws it's supposed to have in it, what pressure it's supposed to withstand. If you don't have that listed, then in the manufacturing, testing, and inspection process, what do they know to look for? They may just let it pass through, and when it gets to your customer and gets put into production, boom, your customer's equipment fails. Lack of risk management or a risk management plan. Again, with a risk management plan in place, if one of those items that you've identified as a risk occurs, you should be able to immediately move to mitigate it. You know, in Florida, with any big project, the first thing we think of is it going to go through the summer and will it be a hurricane? What do we do if there's a hurricane? You know, and you have to take that into account and be ready to move if there is a hurricane. In the case of where you may be taking on the design and manufacture of a product that a customer needs, you need to understand what their performance requirements are. I spoke about it briefly before. You don't want the product to get to your customer and have them put it in their equipment and it breaks down. Poorly planned or poorly managed transitions. It's going to happen where you have a key person that needs to move out, or a project manager gets promoted, or, you know, in a worst case, fired. You've got to be able to manage that transition. And a lot of the documents that the project plan will call out for being needed to be in place should be able to provide that new person, that new individual, with a quick update snapshot on the project and what's going on. An example, an infamous failure. A field data collection automation case study. So I was going to ask everybody here, what do you think that might be? And if anybody online wants to chat in and answer, feel free to. You're going to get the answer in about 5 seconds. But this is what it was officially called. The project was a field data collection automation. And if you're already thinking it involves our government, you're correct. It was an attempt to be able to take the 2010 census using automation. The plan for this began in 2001. The main thought was to leverage technology using new handheld data collection devices to eliminate paperwork. It would require up to 1 million temp workers to be hired, trained, deployed, and managed. With a census, as you probably all realize, every single living person in the United States needs to be accounted for. By 2006 is when it became obvious to the heads of the Census Bureau that their attempt to develop this handheld data collection device internally was a failure. I would think that that is something that they wanted to know maybe by 2002, that their internal development efforts were not going to work. That's the first thing that got out of hand. You're looking at needing to take a census in 4 years, and you've abandoned, in essence, the manual taking of the census, and you have nothing to replace it with. So they put out the bid. It took 2 years to get responses to the bid. Third-party firms comes on board in 2008, and you can guess what happened. I'm the head of the third party, and I say, this is for the 2010 census, so you want it when? And the answer is, by June of 2009. I just throw every resource I have at it and hope that I have a good document from the government that says what it is they want. But there was a very poor failure to establish effective communications with the new supplier, resulted in a significant number of missing requirements. As a result, the 2010 census reverted to paper and pencil, and the cost was an additional $3 billion to conduct the 2010 census. And I believe the number I saw to normally do a census was $10 billion. So this was a 30% increase in cost to take the census. Nothing is said there about the time and effort and money expended over the previous 9 or 10 years to try to develop something new. Oops, sorry. Okay, I guess we will go there. The press reported everything as failure to create an effective governance structure in the early years of the project. We mentioned that, something that would have maybe said in 2002, 2003, hey, we can't do this internally. We need to shop it out. Those of you that are in manufacturing, you're familiar with the term pulling the cord. Was the cord pulled too late? Pulled in 2006? I'd say yes, it was pulled too late. There's extreme lack of communication between the Bureau and its prime contractor. Failure to establish and stabilize the requirements. We talked about that earlier. The end result, the post-mortem, as they called it, 400 plus change orders had been raised. And there was no evidence of a risk management plan. So when everything started to fall apart, nobody really knew what direction to turn, who to go to, what to do. It was a total foobar. Okay, the second topic today was going to be setting project timelines and goals. Your project is going to be successful when you create a project schedule. Why? Because that project schedule is going to develop the work breakdown structure. In other words, who's going to do what, how are they going to do it, what material is going to be given to them. When you can sequence the activities so that you don't have product waiting in a storeroom for 3 years until something else catches up to it. You will identify and assign resources, And most important, you'll get an estimate of the duration of the project. And why is that important? Because the duration estimate is going to automatically show you the critical path of the project. What do I have to make sure is done in order for the project to have its best chance to succeed? You're also going to be successful if you've developed a communication plan. You're going to hear communication a lot. And a good project manager should never stand for somebody saying, I did not know about that, or I did not hear that, or I did not get that memo. If the memo was about a product or a part of the project that that person was dealing with, they should have gotten it, and there should have been a sign-off whether or not they did. You have team meetings regularly. You have notifications that are sent out. It's very easy to do nowadays with the way Outlook. You can schedule meetings and know if people can attend or not. What's critical as a project manager is you want to make sure you've got the right people involved in that meeting. You don't want to be inviting a president to a weekly meeting where you're just going to be talking about maybe the football scores from the weekend. You don't want to waste his time. You don't want to waste anyone's time if they don't have to be there.
But everything is going according to plan.
Yes. And it's a good point, Silas. If no matter what happens in the team meeting, there needs to be a record of it. And if everything's on task, that gets communicated out to the stakeholders, to the team members, even to the customer. Okay?
The first time over there, it includes the cost as well, right?
Yes.
We're going to put it all together and have a cost. If you change something, the cost is going to change.
Yeah, we're going to come to that pretty soon. With every project plan that's established, you should have a communication plan document that describes the stakeholder communication needs. What does the president want to see every week? What does the customer want to see every week? What does the lead inspector on the floor want to see? They're going to want to know, and I say inspectors because it was critical for me in manufacturing, because everything for aerospace and defense is inspected 20 times if it's inspected once. But you want to make sure that those people know, here's what's coming down the lane at you. Do you have the equipment necessary to measure it within X tolerance? And if they say, no, are you out of your mind? Then that's going to lead to a need to acquire that equipment, whether it's through a lease or through a buy. But that then becomes part of expanding the scope, the cost of the project, if you hadn't thought about it ahead of time. I'd like to be able to say to that inspector, yes, we knew you were going to need this machine to do the inspection. We have it in the capital budget for next year. You should have it in time for when production starts. And that kind of leads into it. It's another way of saying you need to know who gets what, when they get it, and how they're going to get it. You need to do a needs assessment so that you completely understand who wants what, whether it's a document, whether it's the product, or if it's a service that you're going to be offering. You want to, as part of your communications plan, you want to identify your top 3 KPIs. KPI is a key performance indicator, something that you can look at and right away know your project is off or your project is going fine. A KPI is a specific measure, and it should consist of the most important project goals. You don't want to be, shoot, I had an example for this and I lost it. You don't want to be measuring, for instance, how many minutes are spent by the workers taking an unscheduled break. Okay, but you do want to know if your engineering department estimated 3 hours to machine and assemble a set of components, and right off the bat, it's taking 10 hours, you want to know that. That's a serious creep in scope and cost. So one of your KPIs may be the amount of labor that's put into your project each week, and you would have a standard set out that you would expect to be utilized during the week, and every Monday morning you get a report that shows if you're over, under, or dead on, and where you might be on or off. Why do we need KPIs? It's real simple. It's going to provide a quick glance at the progress of the project. You should be able to instantly discern the status of that KPI. Like I just talked about with hours. If one of my KPIs is how long has it taken to make my wing for the F-16, and I know it should take 323 hours, and the first week, and it should take 10 weeks to make, and the first week on the line, I get a report back that says they worked on it for 200 hours. Well, then I know something's wrong. And that's just a quick look, what's going on, fix it. And it is just a rough guide. You could very easily find out that you didn't understand the entire process that goes into making that wing, that maybe they staged. They've got a new process in place where they're staging a lot of material ahead of time, and that's where the 200 hours came in. You know, there could be a very easy explanation for it, but you want to know that something might be amiss and then understand if it is or not. Best practices come about when they're developed jointly with those involved, when the stakeholders agree to them. It's got to be relevant to the project. Again, it should be specific, and it should be measurable. Are there any questions from the online crowd? No? Everybody there? So you raise your hand and wave. Setting project timelines and goals. You need to baseline your project scope. And in order to do that, first you need to define the scope. The scope statement is going to be a description of the project scope itself. Description may be, I want a strip mall to be built on Nova Road in Port Orange. Project scope is going to be, I want, 3 major stores, one being a grocery store in the strip mall, and I want so many other types of stores. The major deliverables are going to be, can we get those stores to commit ahead of time to building? The assumptions that we may bring in 1 store in the first year, the other 2 anchor stores in the second and third year, and what constraints might be. For all you know, especially in Florida, you start digging and you're going to hit something that you weren't aware of. And that could very well end up being a constraint as well as a killer to a project. And within the scope, you also want to define, again, the work breakdown structures. I keep saying that, but it's critical to know who's going to be doing what, how it's going to be done, so that you can lay out the time that's going to be needed to complete that project. Once you've got the scope defined, it needs to be approved. And who do you want to approve it? You don't want your great aunt who lives in Milwaukee to approve it. You want the stakeholder, the person who asked for it. That's why it gets submitted to the Change Control Board, a term we saw early on. They want to follow change control procedures in case they read something that says, no, I didn't want that. I didn't want 3 major stores. I only wanted 2. So let's get that 3rd store out of here. The Change Control Board would end up doing a final review and approval, and once they've all signed off on it, then that baseline is set, and that's what you go from. That then becomes the document or plan that progress is monitored and tracked against. You guys have any questions? I'm asking the in-classroom crowd.
In your experience, what is better to take the KPI? The parameters themselves, like timing, cost, or the deviations of the review?
I think I'd always look at a deviation. The question was, ask me one more time.
Yeah.
For the KPIs,
Yeah.
what's most critical?
Yeah, you prefer to track the parameters themselves or the deviation.
Yeah. What you want to make sure first is that the KPI is something that everybody agrees should be tracked, because if it goes off schedule, it's going to impact the project significantly.
Right.
Tracy?
There's a question.
There is a question.
Griffin has a question.
Nancy?
Jesse?
Jesse, okay.
I actually do have a question just as an example. I recently saw the movie Deepwater Horizon, and it came to mind as you started describing the process of creating a project. It seems to me that instance was just a huge project management failure.
Could be. I'm afraid to comment either way on that, because that rig was out there working fine, and something went askew with when they tried to change out a part of it. You know, it could be more of a failure in the safety regulations or the training for the safety. Were you impacted by Deepwater Horizon, Jesse?
No.
No? Okay.
I think it was just too.
Yeah, just an example. Yeah, sure, sure. It's great to have a question from.
It was an oil rig, the Deepwater Horizon movie.
Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, it was in the Gulf of Mexico, and it caught fire and burned and sank, and the way in that first picture of Agbami that I showed you, if you can picture, instead of it being a ship that all the lines are going up to, it was the rig, the Deepwater Horizon rig. And when it caught fire and sank, those pipelines broke. And there should have been an automatic seal, but the seal failed. So oil just kept pouring out into the Gulf. And it took, I honestly don't remember, but it took a great number of days to finally cap it. Yeah. Monitoring and controlling your project. The purpose of the process of monitoring and controlling is to keep the project on track so that you can achieve your objectives as you laid out in your project plan. You want to be able to monitor and report variances, those that you felt are critical. You want to be able to control scope changes. Again, something changes in the scope, it's likely to impact time or cost of the project. You want to control schedule changes as well, and costs and quality. And you want to be able to respond quickly to a risk if it does occur. Something goes awry. Now, going back to the case of the Deepwater Horizon, and by no means am I an expert on this stuff. I'm not even an engineer by training. So, but there could have been, maybe should have been, a risk management plan for what happens if the rig catches fire and goes down, and those, pipelines cannot be sealed off. Just my opinion. In my opinion only. These are, the next three slides that you're going to see are typical of what we would use in controlling our processes, depending on if we wanted, in the case of this first slide, performance reporting. We would first identify our inputs, and the inputs are always going to be the project plan. In this case, we also added on work results and maybe other project records, for instance, inspection records from either a supplier or from on-site build. It says on the middle, the process is to collect and disseminate performance information. That's the status reporting, progress measurements, forecasting. The output's going to be the performance reports and, if something is going awry, a change request. The bottom section there, the tools and techniques, what typically is used, performance reviews, variance analysis, going back to the case of the wing for the F-16. Right away they saw that 200 hours put in the first week when it's supposed to take 10 weeks to build and only take 323 hours. That variance analysis immediately raised a flag. Trend analysis. I think the saying is 3 dots make a trend. So if 3 weeks in a row you see costs rising, or in some cases costs being quite favorable, you want to know what's going on, especially in the world of government, and I mean specifically, say, defense contracting. If you've been awarded a contract that was a very fiercely competed, and you won it based on your pricing, and you notice that for 3 weeks running, your costs are a lot lower than you anticipated, it could be that some of your workers are charging their time to the wrong project. And you need to get that corrected immediately. Because if you don't, then you're in violation of some DFARS or DFAS regulation, and you'll be in trouble with the government. There's a technique called earned value analysis, which is a topic for another webinar. And then your information distribution systems. Who's going to get the information that you've discovered, it has to go to the people that can make the decision then and there as to what to do. It can't be going to the janitor on third shift or the food truck guy that comes at noon. It's got to go to a person who can understand it, understand what the impact to it is, and make a decision as to how to write it. Overall change control, again, you see the project plan is the major input. You're also going to pull in any performance reports that you had from the previous output. You can see on the right-hand side performance reports and change requests. That becomes your, sorry folks, this is some of the, I'm on the right slide now. The output from the previous step becomes the input for your next step for overall change control. And it's going to lead to the output being project plan updates, corrective action, and lessons learned. Lessons learned being important for the next time a contract or a job or an order of this type comes along. Somebody's going to be able to say, hey, when we made that last month, we thought it would take this amount of time, but we didn't realize the testing that was required in between the steps. So now we have to work that in to our cost estimate and our pricing to the customer. Lesson learned. And then finally, the risk response control. The input's going to be the risk management plan, not the plan. It's going to be the risk management plan. It's going to be the actual events that occurred, as well as any additional risk that you may be able to identify. The output is going to be corrective action and updates to the risk management plan. You may have to implement workarounds to keep the project going. Or, as we said, additional risk response development. Put more resources to fixing the problem. Any more questions? No. Okay, so we're about to move into the last phase of the webinar. And this is where I'm going to attempt to do a live demo for Microsoft Project and ProjectLibre. So bear with me while I relocate and let's see. Okay. The first one, the startup business plan, and you may notice both of these have the same name, just different file structures. The interesting thing with ProjectLibre, which is the bottom one, it will allow you to import a Microsoft project plan, but the reverse is not, at least the last time I used these, the reverse is not true. The ProjectLibre folks are making a very serious effort to replace Microsoft Project, period, as the project software of preference for small businesses. Okay, a lot of times, like I mentioned earlier, FMC, they had their own in-house software that they used. And there are other software developers out there that offer project management software. Whoops, didn't want that to happen, sorry. So one of the nice things about Microsoft Project, can somebody online just answer if you can see that or not? Can you see that? Okay. 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 Can I? Okay. Can you? Okay. What you see with projects here is, this is their startup business plan. They've identified phase 1 as being the development of the strategic plan. Why are they really doing this business plan for whatever their new business is going to be? They are predicting that it would take 125 days to think this all through.
This is 2010, Microsoft project.
No, this is 2016. I believe, I don't think 2017 has come out yet. So they've got their project scheduled. I pulled this up yesterday, so it was scheduled to start yesterday and end on January 9th. What I like about project is you can put in for each step the individual number of days that you are estimating it's going to take to complete that task. You can have dependencies. In this case here, you should see me hovering around the number 3. Task number 4 cannot be started until task number 3 is complete. Make sense? Now, if I'm a project manager and I have it set up this way, say at the end of today, or yesterday, say at the end of yesterday, Tracy came to me and said, I can't do that in 2 days. I need 3 days. Right? I should be able to put in, what I'm going to do here is change this to be 2 days to be 3 days. And you should see everything else, the dates going on down the line, they should increment accordingly. They should. Yeah. Did you see that? That's what having those predecessors in place will allow you to do. If you don't have those predecessors in place, that's not going to happen. So now I know, and I can communicate, defining the business is going to take us an extra day. We're not going to be done with that until Friday.
Did it take away a day of the next step? Was it 2 days or no?
No, it was 1 day.
Oh.
Yeah. We'll go back and...
Oh.
Yeah. We've also got the resource names in here, or at least the resource positions, so you know who is doing what. So in the case of Tracy and I saying, it's going to take us an extra day, we know that we need to go to the business advisor manager, whoever that is, and let them know right away, you're not getting our output until a day later. Or that business advisor manager, if you have it set up properly and the critical or the key people on the project know to go in and look at the project plan, like at noon every day and at the end of the day, they can see, oh, I'm not getting that information for another day. And they can call us up and say, hey, what's going on? You know, or get on the ball, you know, put in some overtime, whatever. But that's one of the nice features of Project, and it's Microsoft Project. And it's a feature you should make sure any project management software you buy has in it. Okay? Out to the, oh, thank you, Tracy.
Oh, I thanked the other people.
Oh, okay. What's extending out to the right here is the Gantt chart, which is just the graphical display as we defined it, as to what this project is, how long this project is going to take, and who's going to be working on what, when. If somebody doesn't want to bother with dates over here, they can take a look at the Gantt chart. Now, I'm going to leave, I actually took this project plan and imported it to ProjectLibre. I'm going to close this out. Go to Libre, hopefully. Yeah. See, it looks a little different. But if I open, come on, here we go. Open my file. I'll get there. Here we are. I really do like ProjectLibre better.
Are you trying to open the other, should you open the other one?
No. It should have opened. It should have opened.
Hello.
Oops.
Oh.
It's Project Libre.
View in there, up there, is it? The same bar on the right, view.
Over, oh, here? Yeah.
Isn't it? Oh, there's scan over there in the back.
Yeah. This is the,
Project Libre has a website, and it helps you, it's a tutorial that takes you through your project plan,
yeah.
how to do it.
I was going to
And
mention that at the end. That, well, no, thank you for bringing that up. ProjectLibre is a lot more friendly in their support and quicker to respond. And I'll get this open, believe me. We got the new one.
Also, I noticed that Project Libre, it constitutes a global connection.
Yeah.
So does that mean if I cannot get my product locally, their product, I might find it somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's try it again. Everybody's still with us online, as far as we can tell? Yes, Colleen is. Thank you. There we go. There we go. Oh no, that took us to that took us to the help screen. Don't. If anybody out there has an idea, so you're not watching me struggle up here.
Isn't the link that you opened just open this? It doesn't open. Did you
No, it was.
Oh, check on the deed. You have some other options there. Perhaps
See,
it's-
that's it.
Where you at?
I think it says yes.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh, there it is.
Is Colleen saying, is this the correct file name?
Yeah. It opened last night. Hmm. Well,
It's real life.
yeah,
But
go ahead.
perhaps it opened in another tab.
Yeah.
How'd that work? How'd that work? No.
No. No.
Once it goes on the upper right. No, I'm talking about besides the question mark.
Icon.
What are those?
This or these?
Yeah, the others, yeah.
Those came into play once the file was opened.
Oh.
The different. Well, it's like somebody here said this is real life. Time to call IT. Call the help desk. Just try. Don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, folks. I just don't understand why it's not coming up. It's not even letting me close. Do this again. Probably as soon as we.
But that's the link that you clicked on the slide and it brings this up.
Yeah.
It brings this
So if.
project in there.
Oops. Say that again, Tracy.
Well, on the slide, you click, that's the link that you clicked on your slide that brings up Project Libre, but there's supposed to be a project in there already?
Yeah, that's the project. It's supposed to open.
What if it goes straight to
But it's
the file and click on it
Yeah, there
instead
you
of
go.
clicking this link?
straight to where?
Right there.
The file. Instead of clicking this link because the link may be broken. It goes to the file and try
Yeah.
to open it straight on.
Yeah, let me try that. Hmm.
You.
What? You?
Just try it. Right click.
Yeah.
Project, right?
Yeah, it's not there. It's
Yeah, I don't.
just should be,
Well,
seems to be empty, the file.
It does. I don't.
What if you save to the Microsoft into this again? Or if you try it with this, try to open the Microsoft version.
Yeah, that I don't want to try to do. That takes us. Well, I'm sorry. I'm calling the help desk.
Or just talk through it.
Pardon?
Tell them what it was like.
Well, yeah. One of the, as Silas was pointing out, the icons up here, these will actually give you a little more detailed information. I believe if you were to click on this first one here, if you were the business manager, it would show you across the life of the project what days you had essentially committed yourself to providing support for the project. You can't really find that by itself in Microsoft Project. That was one of the things the main thing that I was going to show you. And it also has the same predecessor operation, where if you need to take more time or less time, it will ripple all the way down through all the tasks and essentially reschedule your project.
I got an idea this might work. What's another file up there?
Here?
Yeah. So, what if it goes to open?
Mm-hmm.
Then we pick out the MPP and set up the POD.
Could be. It did something. But there we go. That's why we have you here, Silas. Now, you can see, hold on. Thank you.
So that's how it brings in another project.
That's,
When you say Project Libre, you can do.
yeah.
Another file.
Oh. And if I could display on the bottom chart here, the histogram, you see, for instance, it does have the business advisor. And as you click on that and you go across, this will say, as I'm peering down at it, on the 23rd of July, which is a Tuesday? No, Sunday. Well, whatever day that is. As business advisor, I'm 100% devoted to this project. Coming the following week, 2 days consecutively, I'm devoted to it. And right away, I'm going to say, wait a minute, guys, there's something wrong here. You've got me working 16-hour days in this week. So we need to adjust that. When you've got the lawyer, the lawyer doesn't come in till the very end or towards the end. There you see time that the lawyer is needed. Manager of the project, of course, is going to be 100% involved in it. And as I said, see, the format is pretty much the same. The display, there's the predecessors. And aside from a little bell and whistle like this, the fact that Project Libre is free is nice. And they have a very, very, very good support group and user support group. So if you're not working in a large company that is probably going to require that you use Microsoft Project or something else, if you're just working in a small company, you might want to just hit ProjectLibre.com and sign up and download it and start using that. Now, I'm going to close this out. I'm still sharing the screen, right?
Right.
Okay. should be, if there are any questions coming in from online. If you think of anything afterwards, you can certainly email us. And for the balance, I just wanted to thank you all for attending in person. Tracy?
Next step slide. Next step.
Did I miss that? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. The next steps that we'd like to recommend is make a list of your questions, if you have any. Contact your small business development consultant, which in this case would be myself, Kevin Tilley. My phone number, direct line, 386-506-3579. If you have a project that you need to develop, that somebody in your company is asking you to lay out a timeline for, I'd be happy to sit with you and help you do that. Develop the timeline, your statement of work, and then we could also stick with you, monitor and control your project until it's completed successfully. And in the end, hopefully you've satisfied the expectations of your shareholders, your stakeholders, and you're going to enjoy the success of your project. So now we will go to any questions.
I have a comment. I believe Center for Business and Industry here at Daytona State offers occasionally Microsoft project
Yes.
questions.
What Tracy is saying, our sister department here, the Center for Business and Industry at Daytona State College, offers a lot of different classes for different software products, and occasionally they will have Microsoft Project offered. If you'd like us to keep you posted on that, call and leave me a voicemail, or if you go to our website, which is coming up next, the SBDCDaytona.com, there'll be a contact us link. You can put the question in there and send that in, and we'll make sure you get on the list to be updated for whenever the College of Business and Industry is holding courses. And of course, for the next webinar, which, speaking of, the next webinar is a week from today, same time, same place for some of us, but it's going to be on cash flow, Mitch? And
Correct. Cash flow management.
Cash flow management, which Mitch Bryant will be giving that, and not making any of the mistakes that I made today.
Real life.
Yeah.
Really?
Can I say a couple of things?
Sure.
Is there I think there's a possibility to include one column with costs, right, for each activity?
Yes. Definitely. And I know for sure in ProjectLibre, you can assign a value to an individual's time. You put in that the manager is making, $100 an hour. You can put in benefits, a benefit percentage if you want.
This can be used for anything that you need to do that has a lot of activities.
Yes.
Right? Activities and time and cost, and anything like that can become a project. Like if a company wants to put a new project, a new product in the market,
Mm-hmm.
can be used, right?
Oh, definitely.
Open a new business.
Or to open a new business. Everything that would go into opening a new business, from starting to, file for your license to operate as a business, to finding brick and mortar to run your business out of, to getting supplies, to hiring and managing people, to marketing your product, everything. Definitely. And there are, I think pretty much everybody knows you can go on the web nowadays and find samples of project timelines for anything like that. There's a, I believe it's project management, all one word, .com. They have just a ton of YouTube videos where the project manager is explaining things like we talked about today. I think she has, last time I looked, something like 247 videos that she's got up, all dealing with projects and how to manage them. But yeah, the internet is a great source. So with that,